Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. As this is live, I'm going to give it a few seconds to get going here. All right. Today is Ask Philip for February 28th. It is actually one of my daughter's birthdays today. So this is happening at a weird time of day. And I wanted to make sure to answer everyone's questions. We had 5 questions. So I'm really glad everyone's taking advantage of this. I know the group has been growing. People have been coming from the podcast. You've been inviting your friends. And it's really great because I think we all learn from each other here. It also forces me to really do the research and look into some topics that I don't always think too much about, because sometimes there are certain things that my clients are not dealing with and you're curious about, and it just expands the repertoire for all of us. So welcome to Ask Philip. This is your chance to ask a personalized question and get an answer. It's a live Q&A here in the Wits and Weights Facebook group. If you're not in the group and seeing this video, such as on YouTube, the link is in the show notes, totally free. Come in and join us. It's safe. I don't allow any members in who don't verify themselves as a real person, and anyone who misbehaves, they're out of here. Zero tolerance. So it's a great place to be. All right. So a few things before we get started. I always like to do some quick announcements. Really, the only announcement that I think I have today is the typical podcast overview for the week. So you guys know we have 3 podcast episodes that come out. They're all reasonable in length, usually about 15 to 30 minutes long. The interviews are a little longer, so it's pretty easy to stay on top of them. If you ever have a question about what episode to check out for a particular topic, just comment in the Facebook group, and I will point you to that. You could always go to podcast.witsandweights.com and search at the top right here, and you can find just about everything you can imagine. So if you want to look up hormones, type hormones, you can see a whole bunch of episodes related to hormones from our entire library of more than 300 episodes. All right, so this week we had an episode on Monday, which was actually a nutrition audit. So these are the rapid nutrition assessments that I do with people. They're 15-minute calls, and I'm going to start recording some of them with the person's permission and putting them on the show so you can get an idea of what they are. This was with Libby, and you can check that out. By the way, if you want to get one of those free calls, you could always go to our website, witsandweights.com, and click at the top right, free nutrition audit. Couldn't be as simple as that. Actually, I don't know if you could see that with my video, but there's a button on the top right. The other way to do it is to click free call right here. So multiple ways to do it. I think there's even a spot on the home page to get to it somehow. Maybe not, and maybe that's something I need to fix, but free call. All right. So the other podcast episode midweek was about HRV. A lot of people are curious about this. Some people couldn't give a lick. But one of my clients in our Physique University, Aubrey, had asked about that. Like specifically, you've talked about HRV a few times. What the heck do they mean? How do I use these numbers? So I did my best attempt at explaining that here. And then today's episode is amazing. It's with Cassandra. She's in our group. She's a client and she's done so amazingly well. And I love her story because it's not just, oh, I lost weight, right? It was actually a pretty significant transformation across a lot of areas, including mindset. And I think everybody can be inspired by listening to her story, as well as a bunch of takeaways and lessons of things she did that will inspire you to think about your approach. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to jump over to the Ask Philip for today. And as you can see, there are 5 questions today. Amazing. So we're just going to jump right into the questions. The first question we have today is from John. And John, thank you always for taking advantage of this in the group. Context. So I'm going to try, I may not read all of this, but here we go. In my current plan, I look to get at least 225 grams of protein with no cap on an upper limit. My body weight's 190. I've experimented with higher protein recently, and it seems to allow me to be in a cut or maintenance and still get stronger, along with a better body composition than previous cut or maintenance cycles. I want to stop right there. So he's saying that decently higher protein seems to be helping him get stronger and help with his body comp. Totally makes sense, right? Protein is very filling. It supports muscle building, muscle maintenance, and some people need more than others. There's always a limit above which you're sacrificing fats and carbs, but it sounds like you, John, have found like a good, solid place to be. Now, at a body weight of 190, 225 is usually higher than I would recommend, as I'll just say unnecessary. But if you were eating, let's say 180, and then you went up to 225, and the difference between the two cuts at those levels is stark and beneficial, that is why we collect this data, my friend. That is why I encourage everyone to do it, and why there are never a They're never one size fits all prescriptions. Even if I recommend to the cows come home 0.7 to 1 grams per pound of body weight, there are always exceptions. It is like a bell curve. There are people over here and people over here, and it helps to track and know how you respond and to try these things out over time. Furthermore, every time you do a cut or build, know that your body is a different body than it was last time, and so it may not translate to the next one either. So you always have to be on top of that. All right, back to John's question. My current plan is to stay at or slightly above maintenance for a few more weeks because I'm seeing nice results. Eventually, this will turn to a bulk, but since my waist is getting smaller, weight in the bar going up, body weight staying the same, I'm in no rush to change what I'm doing. So John's getting some body recomp. That's great. The actual question: what is your take on protein powder and the best way to incorporate it? I try to get all my protein powder or protein from whole food sources. However, there are days when I will add a scoop of protein in oatmeal or Greek yogurt with berries and honey. These are days here and there when life gets in the way. I need that quick extra source of protein. Hey, you don't need to rationalize to me or explain to me. I'm actually perfectly fine with protein powder. Absolutely. I've heard several experts talk about whey being garbage since it's in and out of your system so quickly. I want you to unfollow those people, and I'm glad you put experts in double quotes. I want you to unfollow anybody who says any given food is garbage, okay? Because again, that's a generalization, and in this case, it's just flat out wrong. While others think it's fine for a whey to top off on a day you're short on protein, others think it should be a daily part of your nutrition. Some say 3 servings a day. What I'm getting at is if you think whey is fine, I assume yes, since you don't demonize foods, would pairing protein powder with carbs and or fat is it going to protect the whey protein from getting digested too quickly and be more effective? Okay, so the short answer on this is stop overthinking it. We know now that if you get your total protein for the day, that gets you to 95% of your optimality. The other 5 to 10% of it is, okay, let's distribute our protein evenly throughout the day. Now, people have gone to a further extreme and said, well, now we need to adjust the type of protein, make sure it's not so quickly digestible. We're going to eat casein instead of whey. We got to make sure to have balanced meals with fats and carbs to slow down digestion. That is just way too much tinkering and overthinking, in my opinion. And this is the guy who loves data and loves to tinker. Okay, so my opinion is based on the latest evidence, even if you had 2 meals that had all your protein for the day, you're, again, going to be at that 95%. But go ahead and distribute your protein throughout the day, but don't worry about the digestibility of it. I like balanced meals in general just because of how you feel, your energy, and it's usually tied to blood sugar, for example. Not that blood sugar or spikes in insulin are a bad thing at all, totally normal. But for some people, it may give them too much variance in their energy levels for the day. That's a reason to do it. As far as like the quality of it and all that, whey is from a byproduct of food. It's minimally processed. It's no issue whatsoever. I think protein powder is a great tool. I don't think anybody that says it's garbage or anybody that says you should get a certain amount is right, because it depends. It always depends on you as the individual. So yes, whey is fine. It can be part of your daily nutrition at just about whatever level. Obviously, if you have only whey protein, then you're going to be missing out on lots of benefits of whole foods, not to mention satiety is usually less. And some proteins, if they have lots and lots of ingredients that you don't want to be exposed to it at a high dosage, that's another reason not to have just all whey products. And I don't think that's what you're saying. You're just saying, is it okay to have it? So that, I think that answers your question. I think anybody listening should say, okay, how much protein do I need for the day? And am I getting it? If I'm getting it, then I can optimize a little more and say, okay, should I distribute it a little more? Great. As far as the source, whole foods, animal products, plant products, mix it all together, get your total protein. You are good. Okay. Next question is Helene Savard. I hope I pronounced that right. I like the accents in your name. Living in Canada. Okay. High rep, low weight versus low rep, high weight. What is the difference in what they achieve? Which one do you use at what time in your program? And I had replied to you to say that I'm going to do an episode about strength and hypertrophy. And I say and not versus, because there's too much simplification that says like, this is for strength and this is for hypertrophy or for strength or for muscle building. In reality, it's a spectrum. And if you want to label things, this is the way I would think about it. So strength is about skill development of your movement patterns. It's about maximum force production. It's about neuromuscular efficiency because you're practicing those patterns. It's about motor unit recruitment, like you're trying to you're trying to pull from multiple muscle fibers, and really just and be functional as well. I hate that word functional, but you kind of know what I mean. And so higher loads tend to support strength development. And by higher loads, I mean around 60 to 65% of your max or higher. Now, that's a fairly low bar. If you Google estimated 1RM calculator and you go to like one of the first ones and you say, okay, I can lift 135 or I can lift 225 for one. All right, one rep. So let's say that's your deadlift. And you go down to the table, what you're going to see is these percentages of your max. So when I say strength, I'm talking about 60 or 65% or higher. Now, guess what? You can do theoretically 20 reps at 60%, as a max. Like most people are not going to actually do that in their program. But what does that tell you? Well, that tells you there's a pretty high number of reps that you can still build strength. All right. So it's not just 1 to 6. Like people like to say, like, oh, 1 to 6 is strength, and then 8 to 12 or 8 to 20 is hypertrophy. No, we know that you can build strength and or muscle at a wide range of reps. However, to truly get the exposure to the load and a maximum muscle motor recruitment for maximal force production, you still need exposure to the heavier weights. And that's why a good program will have lower rep ranges. 4 to 6 is like a good sweet spot. I like to tell most people it can go lower than that. And now you're talking about more training for your max, training for powerlifting, things like that. And that's fun too. I love to do that myself. So I think there's kind of like an overall exposure to volume and movement patterns that kind of builds your overall base of strength. And then there's the PRs that you might go after with really, really low reps, right? Then when you have like moderate or high reps, so we're talking like 6 to 12 to 15 to 20, even more than 20 potentially, for something super isolating. Now you're talking about the lower percentages, as low as 30% of your max, and that is going to build muscle, and it may not be as effective for strength. Both can build strength, both can build muscle. It really depends a lot on your programming. So if I go back to your question, what's the difference and what do they achieve? I use both in most programs. So if I'm doing a straight up bodybuilding program, I'm still going to have big compound lifts, and I might have some that rotate through some of the mid to lower rep ranges, like 4 to 6, right? Or I might progress from 8 to 12 to 6 to 8 to 4 to 6 over multiple weeks and be increasing the load and be doing some back offsets for my first lift or two. And then my other 3 lifts of the day are going to be more bodybuilding style, where it's isolation work and I'm pushing closer to failure and all that, right? So I just like a blend. There are power building programs. There are pure strength programs that stick to the lower weight. And so when you say like, when do you use them? If it really depends on what you're going for. So as long as you're not dieting, Helene, you can pretty much do anything. And it's going to depend on your goals and what you like, what you enjoy, what your equipment allows you to do, what you respond to personally when it comes to your volume, right? For example, on average, women tend to respond to more volume than men, higher volume than men. I personally found recently that I responded well to a high volume, base phase that's going to allow me to push my strength. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't try it. So hopefully I gave you some of the differences. There's, no matter what you do, mechanical tension is important, meaning you're going to be somewhat close to failure. How close depends on how big the lift is and the safety requirements as well. So like a squat or deadlift, you might be 2, 3, 4, even 5 reps from failure, depending. Whereas an isolation lift, you might be 1. Like bicep curls, you might be 0 or 1 rep from failure. I think that kind of covers generally what you're asking. The problem is I need more context and specifics on what you want to know, but I'm going to do a podcast soon, very soon, that gets into all of this and my thoughts. And I'm actually going to say, okay, if your focus is on strength, these are the things you want to consider. If your focus is on hypertrophy, these are the things. But most enjoyable kind of modern programs will have a blend of both in there. And building strength will generally build muscle when you're a newer to intermediate lifter. When you get more advanced, it's a little more nuanced. And then focusing on building muscle usually requires you to get stronger as well. So there's a lot of overlap. Okay, let's get to question number 3. This is an interesting one from Carol. Carol says, what is your take on myostatin blockers? I have no plans to take them, but heard about them recently from a friend, and it piqued my curiosity. So I want to Google right now. Wait, did I skip a question? No, I just have them in different order. I want to Google right now. What is the that cow, right? the Belgian blue cattle. So I think that's what it is. All right. So you look up Belgian blue cattle. You see these massive muscular creatures. Okay. Well, they're myostatin deficient. So the idea is if you can block myostatin in a human, you're gonna get super jacked. But the problem is even these animals have like issues, metabolic issues, structural, like physical issues. The tendons, joints, nervous system can't keep up. Kind of like someone who takes anabolic steroids and tries to grow too quickly and their joints can't keep up with it. Their tendons can't keep up with it. There are no FDA-approved myostatin blockers that exist for performance enhancement. I know there are compounds like I think follistatin is called, but I mean I wouldn't honestly touch those at this point. And so long story short, Carol, my take is stay away until we have more evidence. That's it. Just stay away. Now, if you see the people you respect out there who follow the evidence, who are very cautious about this stuff, start to recommend them, or you start seeing them in a bunch of products, maybe that changes your mind. Like ashwagandha, they're throwing it in everything now. It's in tea, it's in protein bars, it's in the multivitamin I take from Legion has it in there. And that's, you could argue that that's a evidence of its efficacy or at least safety. Arguably, I mean, again, we're talking herbs and supplements, and it's kind of an unregulated space, and that's why you have to find people you trust. So that's my take on those, and I wouldn't go beyond that in terms of trying to understand them. Really, they block myostatin, and that's a protein that limits muscle growth. So the idea is you block it, then you can have extreme hypertrophy. So that's what it is. All right. The 4th question today is from Josh. Josh says, I have a question because I'm in the middle of a cut. However, I also caught a cold last week. Man, is everybody getting sick these days? Intuitively, I decided to immediately go to maintenance calories until my cold passed before continuing my cut. Is there any research on this particular subject? And where could I find it? So your question is really about research on whether going to maintenance or whether eating more supports your health. And I'm glad you asked that, because sometimes the question we ask isn't the right question. Like if you ask the question, are there studies on increasing your calories to support recovery? Not many, or any that I could find or that I would trust necessarily to be totally objective, besides like some articles on it that aren't actually peer-reviewed studies. But maybe the question is, will a lack of energy availability make recovery worse? Which, if you think about it, is just the opposite. It's the same thing, but it's suggesting that if we can show that calorie restriction or energy restriction can lead to worse or longer recovery for somebody who is got an issue, then maybe not having the restriction would lead to better recovery. And so it's both sides of the coin. It's like, are we talking about adding calories and going to maintenance, or are we talking about not being an energy restriction? And I get it. Some of it is semantics. So I included 3 links. So anybody watching this who wants to go check those out, go find the Ask Philip from February 28th that we're doing today, and you'll see the links. But I pulled one of them up here for those watching on video. And again, I didn't exhaustively review these, but I like this article. It is it's Frontiers in Nutrition, the National Library of Medicine. It's on PubMed. It's a relationship between nutrition and the immune system. I like it because I feel like it's a jumping off point, because they are looking at, it's a review. They're looking at lots of data. It's not a meta-analysis, but they're actually looking at they're looking at different studies and different things that have been examined. Like the role of vitamin A, the role of vitamin C, the stimulation of apoptosis, which is the suppression of cancer cell proliferation. There's some really interesting studies on cancer cells and tumors that show that that cellular ability to repair themselves and recover and utilize the immune system is impaired when you don't have enough energy coming in. Selenium, this was during COVID vaccination, the role of cholesterol to regulate immune function. And I sent you some other links as well. But here's the thing. As much as I love studies, by evidence-based, I am not just quote unquote science-based. I mean, yes, I am, but not just. And what I mean by that is, to me, the best evidence you have is you. N equals one. It's when you got sick and you made sure to get enough calories and protein, did you recover pretty quickly versus another time you got sick and did? And I know it's hard because a lot of variables are changing, but being someone who coaches clients through these, my immediate advice when someone is sick, which is based on seeing how much it helps people, is to increase calories to maintenance. To, before you're sick, you should be dosing with some vitamin C as part of your supplements, or having plenty of fruits and vegetables to consume plenty of vitamin C. In my opinion, I've definitely seen your ability to get sick seems to go down, or your ability to recover faster seems to go up. Once you get sick, it doesn't seem to make a difference. It's leading up to it. And then having protein as well. There's so many reasons, because protein is a building block of lots of structures in your body. And so there's logically, you could say, well, if you're trying to recover and support your immune system, wouldn't you give yourself every chance possible and not take any resources from any other part of your body so that your immune system can be at its fullest? That's the way to think about it, Josh. It's like, it's not necessarily a direct effect, but it could be an indirect effect, that your immune system itself has its resources sapped because you're in a deficit. And if you're not, it has everything it needs. So that's my thought on it. I hope that was helpful. Definitely great advice to eat your food, eat your protein, even if it feels tough to do because of your appetite. The other advice I have is go for walks. Like, unless you're totally high fever and it's just like it would drain you to even get off the couch or whatever. I love walks because they can also stimulate the immune system in ways you don't even quite realize until you do it. You might feel terrible when you start, but just try going for a walk, even if it's a slow shuffle outside with vitamin D, and see if that doesn't also help with your cold recovery. Okay, and then we have one more question. There's a lot today. This is from Hannah. Hannah? Maybe it's Hannah. I'm on week 3 of my first ever cut. All right, good for you. That's always fun. I planned on doing it for 8 weeks because I thought that would be a reasonable time for compliance. To be honest, I wasn't sure I'd be able to do it, but it's going well. But I'm wondering how long my cut should be instead of choosing an arbitrary number. And then I did reply ahead of time, and I said, hey, it's great that you're testing the waters. I usually recommend 12 to 16 weeks max, or as long as needed, until you feel comfortable that you've achieved the leanness you want, and then spend most of your time building muscle. Excuse me. So I think that's a good one. I think, however, there's lots and lots of nuance. And so I just spoke with a client yesterday who loves to experiment with much more extreme protocols, rapid fat loss protocols, glycogen depletion protocols, and whatever. And the same thought came to my head that this is your first cut, so you just don't know what's going to happen. So my suggestion is to keep it simple. Same calories. Pick a rate that's reasonable and sustainable that you feel you can eat. Allow yourself some indulgences in there. Don't beat yourself up if you have to go out to eat. Not have to, but if you go out to eat or you eat a little more one day, be tracking, look at the average, make sure it's on path, and then just go as long as you can or need to. And if it feels really, really hard, well, that's a good sign. Maybe you stop. And by hard, I mean, there's specific things you can measure: your energy, your sleep, your training performance, your hunger, your cravings. If fat loss starts to slow a lot because your metabolism is dropping pretty fast, all of those are reasons to say, I'm done. I'm going to take a break for a while. I'm going to spend some time building muscle. And then my stronger body with more muscle later can go into another fat loss phase. And it'll probably be easier on higher calories at that point, because that's a different physical version of me at that point, right? It's not because of reverse dieting. It's not because you could fix your metabolism. It's just because you're creating a more supportive body for your metabolism. Okay, so that was your question, right? 8 weeks. So you said 8 weeks, and I think again, eight's perfect. Go for it. Like, that's your goal. Try it for 8 weeks. See how much you got. You should know the rate of weight loss you achieved, and then hopefully most of that was fat. If you're tracking your body fat with like the Navy measurement, for example, so you can know how much if you lost any muscle at all and how much of it was fat and all that fun stuff, measuring your waist, measuring your circumference, like all of that. And I don't know how much of that you are up on. It's something I talk about on the show. And then in our Physique University, we guide you through that exact process, give you all the tools, and kind of give you the spreadsheets and whatnot to do it. But that's what I would do. So I agree not to choose an arbitrary number as a target almost ever, until you're a little more advanced. Like, I know I'm going to have a mini cut soon that's going to go for 7 weeks. I know roughly the rate of loss and I know roughly where I'm going to hit. And even then, I can't guarantee that I'm going to hit that exact number. So I'm going to pick a number that is probably a little more conservative in case I go slower than expected so that I definitely hit a number. If you're using macro factor, you could always change the target anyway now. So all good. So that's what I would do. Yes, don't choose an arbitrary number. Choose a rate that is sustainable and make the thing work within your life. All right. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. This was an awesome one. I think that's all I have. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have comments, love the video, like the video below, and then add a comment or follow-up question. And then if you want to do the next Ask Philip and have me answer your question live like this, jump into the Wits and Weights Facebook community. And Mr. Alan Friedman will be posting the next request for questions on Monday, and you'll have just under 2 weeks to get those in. All right. Have an amazing weekend. Spring is coming. It is March, and I hope you all enjoy yourselves. Keep lifting, enjoy great food and great people, and have fun.